to Africa Speaks once again of today. The question of what's going on in Africa and what the West left behind in Africa in terms of democracy, in terms of all the institutions that they left, and in terms of the fact that a lot happened with what they left behind to be exactly like the institutions that they have here in the West. But something went wrong. Those who were left behind to manage the institutions in Africa went in a different direction. And that is why the continent is in the situation it is in at the moment. Big surprise? My guest today in the studio is Richard Dab, the broadcaster, a journalist, an author. I don't know what he hasn't done. He's been with the BBC, he's been with the Al Jazeera, and I've known him for quite a while, and quite a very good gentleman, and has visited Africa.
Thank you.
Has visited Africa on so many occasions. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Now, we have always discussed the issue of Africa in the West here, and in Africa itself. We talk about Africans, ourselves as Africans, and we say, well, what's wrong with us? Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to know, in the eyes of somebody who's visited Africa from the Western world, how do you view Africa? How do you make a definition of where we are in all our chaotic situations?
Well, I start with the music of Africa. Yeah. So I know it's not the most politically sensitive area so I start with the music of Fela Kuti. So yeah. I've started collecting that, and I learned a lot of about Africa through listening to African music.
Okay.
And you know, it took me many years before I actually went to Africa.
All right.
And I've been going back there a few times now. There's still lots of the continent that I need to discover.
Okay.
But each time I go there, I learn that each African country is very different.
Yeah.
And I think that's your starting point, because you can't say Africa as a continent.
Yeah.
It's like saying Europe as a continent.
Generalizing.
I mean, just the difference between France and Serbia is massive, you know.
Yeah.
So, I think that there are no easy generalizations when you come to say, what is Africa doing wrong and what is it doing right? I mean, you've got an incredibly rich culture, but the problem is the tribal nature of politics and the persuasive impact of power that means that your presidents want to hang on to power, whatever, whether they're compos mentis, whether they can understand one sentence or another, or whether they've gone 3 terms out of a 5-term and they want another 6 terms. You know, it's just, they've got to know that power is temporary, it's not permanent.
Right. Money as a major issue. Money. They've got so much money.
Who has? The president?
Yeah, of course, the people in power. They've got the money.
Yes.
And that is where the underlying factor. If the Nigerian elections recently, one would say the money that was spent on the Nigerian elections less than a month or so ago is over something like 5 to 6 billion by the 2 candidates, the 2 top candidates. And I was interviewing the chairmen here a couple of weeks ago, and okay, they didn't mention the money, but from the research that I did, that money is enough to build hospitals, roads, do some roads and so on, but to spend simply, you know, because they have it. So could we say that money is a major factor in damaging the political structure of the continent?
Corruption is everywhere, to be honest. So let's not just say corruption happens in Africa. That's obviously not true.
Okay.
But it is true that if you become the president of an African country, you have an influence and a family and hangers-on and friends who all want to be your best friend, and you give them money in order for them to continue to be your best friends, etc. And that builds up a sort of institution.
How can that be prevented? The way the England was like that. Britain was like that
Yeah.
years ago when the kings had the powers.
Well, there were rotten boroughs, weren't
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Rotten boroughs around London where politicians, who were the early politicians in the House of Parliament, would buy the vote, would distribute money to say, vote for me and I'll pay you this and I'll, you know. So that, first of all, you've got to have a voting system that is reliable
Okay.
and that people trust.
Yeah.
Because if they don't trust the voting system, then it's open to exploitation and you get elections that are fraudulent.
Yeah.
So the results of elections have got to be respected by each and every electorate within Africa, within anywhere really.
Okay, all right.
So that's the first stage. How do you impose an electoral system which is not corrupt?
Yeah.
First of all, you have to, a great way is having external observers.
All right.
Now, we know that the UN sends external observers for elections, so that's one way of doing it. So they come in and they observe the good practice of an election. And if there is vote rigging, stuffing of papers into ballot box, which does happen everywhere, let's not just focus on Africa, it does happen everywhere, but they would report it and it would be an electoral liability and the result of the election would be rendered null and void.
But the thing is sometimes the elections are already rigged before they even take place. I mean, the Nigerian one, when they postponed it, something was actually, it became obvious that the next Buhari would win the election because the 48 hours to go and suddenly it's postponed for another 2 days. Now, what was it that, so that's what I'm saying is that the people who are actually running the elections already have a side.
Yeah.
So my only guess is that technology will probably come in and maybe help out, because if it's like what is happening now with Tesco, the suggestions have been done. Let's say, for example, Tesco and Sainsbury, most of the stores here, they don't really need to know that if a particular store has run out of milk, because the barcode, they simply pass the barcode on the system.
Yes.
And that's it. Now, Liberia has suggested that.
Yeah. Have they tried it yet?
Oh yeah, it's tried.
In Liberia?
In
Right.
Liberia, they tried
Right,
it.
right.
That's how, what's his name?
George Weah.
George Weah won
Yeah.
the elections.
Yeah.
Because the structure was so centered that it would be difficult. It would be difficult. You can't, because once the barcode has gone on, it has all your details.
Yeah.
So whether you've lost your card or something like that, you can't use another person's card. It's the barcode that
Yes.
people are using.
Yes.
And in America, because of what happened in Florida, they're going to try and use the same system. Because although they already have everybody's name on the electronic history, it's their computerized system. But because of what happened with the Russians, they are trying to change that method. Now, don't you think Africa needs to head there, put technology, put money into this project?
Well, I think I think that's a really good idea. I mean,
Yeah.
get the Bill Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
I know that their primary objective is to eradicate disease.
Malaria and cholera and all that.
Well, maybe corruption, if we regard it as a disease.
Yeah.
And we say to Bill Gates, you know, there's another disease you need to sort out in Africa.
Yeah.
It's not malaria,
Yeah.
but it's electoral corruption.
Yeah.
Can you not improve the voting infrastructure
The problem is
for
going to be
countries around the world, around the continent?
the presidents won't accept it. That's one major problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. You see,
They want to bring it forward. They'll just say, hang on a minute. No. We're okay, thank you.
it's great you point that out, because I was at an exhibition at the Whitechapel Art Gallery a few days ago.
All right.
And it's about the art of tomorrow, what the future would look like.
Yeah.
And there is a big installation on the first floor, and it's about what people would like to improve their lives.
All right.
And you write on a piece of paper and pin it up, and the art installation is the collection of papers that are pinned up there.
All right.
And I was just scanning around looking at it,
Yeah.
and one person had written, "We want democracy now, no more Bouteflika." Now, here you have the president of Algeria,
Yeah.
not even living in the country, right?
Yeah.
He's terribly ill.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
probably had
He
2
was in a
strokes.
wheelchair, yeah, he was in a
He can
wheelchair.
he can hardly speak.
Yeah.
And yet he still wants to stand for election. And that just underlines both the attractiveness of power, the fact that he can't give it up, but despite his health. But it also shows
at 100, at 90 something. I think
but it shows that the people around him don't want to give up power because they know that it's finished for them. Because they're, if you like, their club, their tribe, which is the Bouteflika tribe, have finished if he's not there anymore. So if the main man's not there, and he's not there physically and possibly even mentally, so he's not there, but we need to do something to make sure he still is there. So they'll wheel him on stage and they'll give him something to read, or they might read his speech for him.
I saw the pictures and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. There was even one from Africa, I think Bongo, one of the presidents. He actually lives in France. And he comes.
he lives in France.
He lives in France, in Paris. And then he comes in once in a while. He comes to Africa for a visit, and then suddenly the elections are here, and he's been winning them.
You see, that's presidential tourism, isn't it? You know, maybe that's the answer, that the president doesn't live in the country that he's president of.
There is always something. Say, for example, the organizations. The political organizations, political parties, and so on. Because what the presidents do, they destroy the political parties. They have the power. Anybody who challenges them is removed from the party. Now, when he's removed from the party, the other ones fear to be removed from the party, so they remain loyal to the person who is in charge of the party. Now, that voice has always been the key element of why presidents, anybody who challenges their power is removed. And with the dictators, it was even worse. They just kill you off. You know? So somebody gains so much influence, and it becomes difficult. But the British, years ago, fought this. Could we take a leaf of what they did in terms of saying when Labour came, the way Labour came in, fighting the bourgeoisie, as they say, and, you know, can we take that leap if you were to advise?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because our parliament is going through such ructions over Brexit. At the moment, and people say it gives a terrible impression of the country. I take completely the opposite point of view.
Really?
It just shows that the institution is working in that the Prime Minister who wants her deal to go through can't get it through Parliament. Now, imagine if that was Mugabe years ago in Zimbabwe. Would it get through Parliament? The answer is yes.
Yes, it would.
Yes, it would. And then President Xi in China is similar. He claims that, and I've seen the film, that China is a democracy. And there's a film out on the web, people can see it, and an American guy explaining why the Chinese democracy is so effective. Chinese democracy is what President Xi wants, right? And what he wants, he gets. So everyone agrees with him, and he has a rubber stamp parliament, and you can say, well, therefore, if you had a benign dictatorship, at least things would get done. And we have political paralysis here, which is true. But it shows you that the institution of Parliament is robust enough to embrace a whole variety of opinions.
Of course,
Whereas in Africa, the president's opinion matters, and the president's advisors, their opinion matters, and there is no room easily for opposition. And that's the issue, that I think that you've got to respect that there will be other political viewpoints and opponents to your view, even though you're the one in power. And it is not your role to destroy the opposition. Actually, it's your role to debate with the opposition and come up with better decisions as a result of it.
How about the issue? You've talked about China. China has an issue, which they were saying President Trump would never have been president of China if he had used the system in China. Where the system in China, you come from the ground, from the grassroots, where you have to work at, say, for example, the district level or the council level. Then you climb the stairs, you go from the council level, you become a councillor, you become, you go on raising up to eventually come to the main party areas where you actually sit with the people's Congress. And then from there, you can be selected to be president. Now, they are suggesting, say, look, America should change its system, and the Republicans are thinking about it, where people like Trump, for example, who are billionaires, would simply walk in, use your money, your influence, and so on, and eventually become president. Now, I'm looking at it from the point of view of Africa. If African leaders or people who are coming in from Africa have worked at the council level, the district level, then they climb from the district to ministerial level, and so on and so on, because they've been down as from the chief level up to the top, the chances that they will have worked through the system. Now, could that help Africa?
Yes, I see what you're saying, Stephen, because what it does mean is that very gifted people come through those levels of training, don't they?
Yeah.
So you get the best rising to the top.
Yeah.
And then eventually, through a process of almost natural selection, the best person becomes the president.
Of course, of course.
The flaw in that system is the people don't have any say in it whatsoever.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So there is no vote for President Xi. They simply applaud him and salute him, but they don't vote for him.
Okay.
And he has now changed the constitution where that never happens in Africa, does it? So that he'll be president effectively for life.
Yeah.
There used to be a convention in China that you had 2 terms, a bit like the American president's 2 terms. And then in that second term, your anointed successor would be president at the People's at the People's Congress. You would know who that successor was, and then he would be voted through, and that was the continuity. And he's got rid of all that. And it's almost to the extent now that he's saying, I am the best person to know where China is going to go. And it's a touch of the African president syndrome, that is, isn't it?
I think to a certain extent.
To some countries, not all. Some. I mean, Liberia is a classic example of where Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, known internationally, worked for the World Bank, I think, didn't she? She did, and then she was voted in as president, and she respected the Constitution. Now you've got George Weah, who's got more star quality. But there's already rumours about corruption and all things associated around that and his government.
Well, they say something about a weakness, some kind of weakness that he has, because
weakness. It's more like weakness. Yes.
It didn't come from a political background.
No.
He didn't serve anywhere.
It came from the football pitch.
The football pitch.
Yes.
Suddenly. Then he's having advisors.
Which underlines your point that he didn't come as a local official, district official, national official. He's never seen that political progress, has he?
Yeah, so he's taking anybody who comes on board and he's advising him to do something.
He's
taking that person on board. And that is where the biggest weakness is within Africa, within Africa and the African democracy. Somebody becomes the president. The family comes in, other people comes in with schoolmates and so on and so forth, regardless of where they have been. But if these people were coming in and suddenly you're looking at their CVs and you're looking at where they have been, and the parties are raising their hands and saying, hey, whoa, not Richard, don't put him there. Where has he been? That kind of thing. Because if that kind of thing comes on, then there's a possibility that we're going to have the right people in the right places. But naturally, that doesn't happen. But I'm looking at the way the British system works now.
Yes.
Because also you have jobs for the boys. This has been a major issue here for quite some time. How is it being addressed now?
Well, you've still got a high proportion of politicians went to Eton or Harrow, didn't they? So they went through the principal public schools, and then from Eton they went to Oxford or Cambridge, and then from Oxford or Cambridge they became politicians, and then they went to Westminster, and now they're in the House of Commons. Members of Parliament. What experience of real life do they have? And the answer is David Cameron. Not enough, frankly. David Cameron had a lot of skills, right? Let's not denigrate him entirely. And I must say that when we had a coalition government, which remember was a coalition between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives. So the Liberal Democrats were able to modify some of the more extreme right-wing policies of the Conservatives. and the Conservatives were able to introduce more free thinking in terms of trade and enterprise with the Liberal Democrats. Now, I know at the time it was a coalition of necessity because no one had a majority, but actually they worked together very well, and so you got a range of opinion, and therefore you had to have accommodation for all of that opinion because one political party was with another political party, and it seemed to work. However, it all fell apart, didn't it, when David Cameron said, "I want to have a referendum about our membership of the European Union," and therefore we're suffering the consequences of that.
What happened?
But if you look historically, the Western powers did no favors to Africa whatsoever, did they? I mean, they were there. I mean, look at Belgium. You know, Belgium, the King Leopold was there to screw as much wealth out of the Congo as he possibly could. And it wasn't respect for the people, it was respect for the minerals he could get out the ground, you know. So the West have exploited Africa in lots of different ways. And the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Germans, the Italians, all of them.
The problem now is that it's the Africans who are exploiting Africa.
Right.
That's what I say.
So that is the vicious circle, is it?
The Western influence, comes in because our fellow Africans themselves are saying, hang on a minute, we need the gold and diamond because the West is out. Sell them to the West, keep the billions in the bank. I mean, read about Angola. You say the president of Angola, I think he's retired now, but 40 billion.
40 billion. How's he going to spend that?
Exactly. We are the ones now exploiting our own people, and that money would be enough to build hospitals. You know, and but as I said, the thing is, how can we prevent? Because it's a preventative measure now that we are looking at. Can there be a way in which this kind of thing can be stopped in a way? A solution could easily be found whereby Africans' wealth, now the Chinese are in as well to try and tap on that wealth. You know, soon we'll probably run out of of wealth at all, and then nobody will want to come down.
Nobody will want to come down.
Can there be a way?
Let's take an example, Stephen. I'll give you an example. I'll tell you a little story. That I was at the BBC Broadcasting House. And I came out of Broadcasting House, which is near Oxford Street. So you head that way on. If you turn right, you're heading away from Oxford Street. And I heard this chanting going on, not far from Broadcasting House. So I decided to take a walk in the opposite direction to Oxford Circus to find out what the chanting was all about. And there were a group of people playing music and chanting, and I didn't know precisely why they were standing not in a sort of reservation in the middle of the road, right? So I went over to talk to them, being just naturally curious. And they explained to me that they were a group of Somalis who were protesting about the role of the Kenyan government in their country. Now, and they thought that it was a malign influence, that the Kenyans were Kenya has access to a whole lot more coastline if they have influence in Somalia, clearly. You've only got to look at that map, haven't you? So they were protesting, but they were protesting for their government against a different country. And they were protesting to support what the Somalian government was doing in their attempt to raise a country which was often thought of in the West as a failed state to a properly functioning democratic country. Now, Somalia, if any country could suffer, Somalia has suffered.
Of course.
You've still got Al-Shabaab that are active, and you've still got large areas that are effectively a war zone. But what they're saying is that Al-Shabaab is being defeated, that it has access to a huge amount of oil and gas reserves, that it has other resources as well, and that there is now the big scramble for the contracts to extract the oil and gas off that coast. Now there's some sort of stability. I'm not saying it's complete and total, but some sort of stability in Somalia. And they want to build a new country, a new Somalia, and they want to go to Somaliland and make it all one again.
Yeah.
And negotiations, they tell me, are already underway.
Yeah.
And because of the extraordinary diaspora of the Somalis around the world,
Yeah.
who've all built careers and businesses and even political careers as well. There are Somali councillors here in London, aren't
I
there?
know. Even in Australia.
In Australia,
America,
right.
yeah.
Well, so all that expertise is now outside the country, and they want to bring it back. Now, the diaspora are putting a lot of money into Somalia, as you were saying,
Yeah.
and now they want to see if they can rebuild the country almost from scratch, with institutions that they will borrow from places that they've seen around the world.
Yeah.
And the current president of Somalia was trained and
educated, I think,
and
in
educated,
America,
educated in America. But now he's trying to build something out of what was a failed state.
Yeah.
Now there's an example of an African country that is trying to do things differently. Now I know that they've got a long way to go. Let's not say that everything's perfect over the rainbow. You know, it's they've got a huge amount of work to do. But the will of the people and of the Somalis to have proper, productive lives for their families and their children was apparent when I was speaking to them all.
The biggest problem we have, and I'll speak as a Ugandan, in the terms that we got tribes in Africa, and Nigeria, for example, has over 200 or so tribes. My country has about, I think, 30 tribes, and so on and so forth. We got tribes. Our cultures are different.
Yes.
We may borrow one thing or another that looks similar, but the chances are we all speak sometimes different languages.
Yes.
And there is a tendency
To support your tribe.
to support the person who speaks the same language as you.
Right.
Now, that has been a major problem, because when one person is in power, he looks at the people where he comes from, and you're going to find that they take major roles in the army, in the police, and in other areas and so on. And that has been a setback, because where someone could be a very good person, could be a very good and intelligent person who is going to do something for the country, but because he comes from a very different tribe, he might not succeed in, Now, the question is always going to come, how can we work towards that? I know as an Englishman, it's going to be difficult for you, but you have Scotland here, you have...
They've got
Ireland.
tribes.
You've got Ireland.
Yes, we have,
and
yeah.
so on. And you're also seeing it, as sometimes you find it that the Scottish are also jumping on the English and saying, look, the Welsh are also saying we need to keep our Welsh sort of cultures and so on. Now, but United Kingdom has been United Kingdom for the last 400 years.
It has, hasn't it?
How did you overcome all this? Can Africa try and overcome this tribal, ethnic sort of thing? Because it's to me, I believe it's one of the things that really keeps setting back.
Do you know, I understand exactly what you mean. And I did some work in Saudi Arabia. I know I've leapt continents, but just bear with me for a moment. And I was doing some work for the Saudi Fund for Development, and we had
with the Fifth World Production.
Yes. And we were doing a big film about what Saudis were doing to help African countries as well as other Middle Eastern countries. So, and it was essentially a film to show that we are not directly funding Al Qaeda. We're building roads in Beirut and Mali and other places. Okay, so they needed to demonstrate where the money was going, and we sat at this formal ceremonial dinner, and the boss of the Saudi Fund Development introduced himself and told me where he was from, and it turned out that everyone around that table who were senior officials in the Saudi Fund for Development came from the same district. And so I made a joke of it, and I said, oh, and you come from that, and they all came from there. He'd employed all the people that he knew from his own district. So, and they now are occupying very, very central roles in Saudi Arabia's funding body, if you like. So I can understand the power and patronage and why it's easier to talk to someone who's from your own tribe because you share a background that you both know.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it comes down to quality of life.
Okay.
If you are administering an election correctly, and the people who are putting forward policies that you support are there legitimately to try and improve the quality of life, the sort of Somalis I've been speaking to build schools and hospitals and keep their promises, and not to siphon off the funds that were supposed to be in the hospital to the presidential yacht. That's where you begin to get integrity into the system. So you begin to get progress, I think. You've got to be able to trust that whoever you're voting for is going to deliver what you want them to, what they say they're going to deliver. And I think that there is a mismatch between what politicians often say, and this is not exclusive to Africa, by the way, and what they actually do, you know, and that mismatch has got to be addressed. And the first way of addressing it is get a proper electoral system that everyone trusts.
How about the power of the media? Because I have a feeling, a couple of years ago, I should say, in fact, 10, 20 years ago, when I was working for the New Vision newspaper in Uganda, and Museveni had just been in power for at least 6-7 months, and he was really doing so well. And the whole point was is that we could report on anything. We could report on what the army were doing. We could report on anything. We were allowed to do that because the system was accepting that really the media has to be free to pick up on anything.
Yes.
And even now, Uganda, the media is free. You can write about anything. The only problem, the difference now is that sometimes you say these things, but then the government doesn't act.
Yes.
But it has gone in the beginning, and I should say in Zimbabwe and in South Africa now, the structure is there for the media to say what they see, as long as it's honest. If they see that something is wrong, they actually comment on it.
Yes.
And Julius Malema, who's one of these young men in South Africa, who's doing quite a lot in terms of pointing mistakes of the ANC. You know, he's been in Parliament, he's in Parliament, and he's doing quite a lot. He's upholding the South African media for maintaining that, because he says, look, this is keeping in turn that the politicians are not messing around. What they did to Zuma, they brought out most of the structure, which they can't do now in Sudan, Southern Sudan, for example, in certain areas and other areas. The power of the media is a good issue, and I'm trying to see how can that be maintained, because it's being eroded. Getting journalists in prison, killing them.
Yes.
Yeah, it's being eroded. How can Africa try and...
I think for a properly functioning country, and I don't say it's Africa or European or North American, you have to have a free press. And that free press is there to hold power to account.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a fear amongst those in power about the practice of that. And the American media, well, Trump would love to have control of it. He'd like the whole of the American media to be like Fox News.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they reflect his views. And he always talks about the failing New York Times because it doesn't reflect his views.
Exactly,
So you've got to have both, haven't you? You've got to have the voices that say, wait a minute, do we actually need a wall that we're going to cost X billion, you know?
Dollars,
and does he have a legitimate state of calling a state of emergency just to get his funds for his pet project? That's almost presidential, isn't it, in terms of I don't know, any old country. But so I don't think the West are providing great examples for Africa at the moment, and President Trump is certainly not providing a great example. But there are good examples within Africa itself. I mean, I was reading about Mo Ibrahim, the telecoms entrepreneur, who's the multi-millionaire, billionaire possibly.
He's been doing quite a lot,
His initiative to create good governance and awarding presidents for who will step down after their term of office is a very significant one.
Yeah, but apparently,
But he doesn't have enough people that he can actually award the amount to, does he?
And of recently, they've even stopped inviting him to places. And there was another.
Why is that?
professor-
Why have they stopped inviting him?
Well, I think that when the leadership sees that you've started encroaching on their territories,
Oh, right, I see.
you become a danger. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a professor from Kenya who's been going around preaching good leadership and so on, and he's been everywhere. And at one point, they have even started now also stopping him from entering certain African country. He went to one country and was actually deported. They deported him back to Kenya.
Right.
Yeah. So you are looking at governments that have the powers
Yes.
to do what they want.
Yes.
And it becomes difficult. And in the beginning, I thought education could be the key, but even educated leaders are doing exactly the opposite. Because once they sit in the power there, it becomes a very different
It's
story.
such an attractive thing, isn't
I
it?
know,
Power.
And that's
You know,
why-
your family invest a lot in you. They educate you abroad. You come back. Through whatever reason, you suddenly rise to become minister of something, or even president of something, and you love it. You love the fact that, as I saw when we were, where was I? In Sierra Leone, right? I was in Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
I came out of the hotel, and the traffic is going that way out of town, and this way into town.
Yeah.
And suddenly, a car came the wrong side of the road
yeah, yeah.
with a convoy.
Yeah.
Because it was easier to avoid the traffic jam,
Yeah.
to travel the wrong side of the road,
Yeah.
and that was the minister of something or other. And I watched him as he drove past. So he easily drove into town
Yeah,
because he was on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah, yeah.
And because he can do it.
Of course.
And that is the attractive element of power.
power, yeah.
But imagine what everybody else thinks when they're sitting in their cars trying to get to work, and only the minister can get there on time. It's not going to endear you to politicians.
No, and there is one thing which we've been debating on here is that when they get sick, the politicians, most of them are thrown out of the country for better medical treatment. And then you say, hang on a minute, why don't they build the hospitals so that they don't have
so
to
they have the
travel
medical
abroad,
treatment. They don't have to go
because
to
they're spending
Switzerland.
more money
Yeah.
to go to Germany, France,
Yes,
or get the
yes.
treatment. They could easily train the doctors who are there and,
Yes.
and be treated back home. Why do they have
Yes.
to spend money to go abroad? So
Yeah.
an ordinary man gets sick in Africa and dies there. Nobody cares. Who is he? You know. So it all goes back to, of course, as we say, the power. But the issue of the non-profit organizations, like you've mentioned Somalia.
Yes.
And a Somali friend was telling me that what we're trying to do now is forget about the government. Forget about what the government is doing. You can do
Yeah.
something. Go and do it.
Yeah.
Go and do it yourself. Build a hospital, go and build it. Do this, go and do it. So when you do it, and it's running and it's okay, and you're doing it, it's like a charity organization that they've
Yeah.
got so many of those in Somalia at the moment.
Yeah.
They're doing the do-it-yourself kind of projects,
Yeah.
which are very successful. They're not asking for any money.
Yeah.
They're not asking for any money or anything. And people are even leaving government hospitals to go to private hospitals who are charging money, but less money, because they're there to help the people. Now, I have belief that if we do that as private people in other parts of Africa, could this be of any help? Because it happened years ago in this country. I mean, W.H. Smith, some of the people that I've read about, I mean, the man, William H. Smith, who started W.H. Smith, he was from a very rich background. He woke up one morning and said, hang on a minute, we have all the books, we throw them away, we are wealthy people.
Yes.
But there are people in the back who come from poor background, who can't buy books, who are poor, and better start something that's going to help them. And the projects grew even years after his death. It's a massive store. Now, I'm saying we've got to teach Africans to be more independent in a sense, not just thinking in terms of me, instead of thinking in terms of we. Because I've tried it to try and raise money for for the marathons that I've been doing. And I go and say, look, I'm raising money for,
Yeah.
I'm running for this.
And you have that
charity.
cultural problem,
oh my
do you?
goodness, and it's, no. You know, I don't, even when they have the money, they'll say, I said, look, give me a pound.
All right.
Put a pound. It's going to a good cause.
Hmm.
And still somebody would shake his head and say, no, he wouldn't give it to you. So the art of giving, how do we bring it? How do we install it into the Africans? I don't know. It's asking this question in an African. How do we put it in our people? Because here,
Yeah.
charities, here, people are donating. The red nose, my goodness.
Yes.
It's going to
It's
Africa.
good you raise that, because Comic Relief here is a major fundraising activity that's been going on for 10 years, more than that now, more than 20 years probably.
Yeah.
And it was set up by Richard Curtis, who's a script writer and well-known broadcaster and writer, and he wanted to do something to help Africa.
Yeah.
And so we have this marathon television program as a yearly event now, and Comic Relief raises millions and millions.
I know.
But you know what? When I watch it as a white person sitting in my house in Kent,
Yeah.
I get irritated by famous white people going over and explaining to me how difficult it is to run a hospital or run this or do this, or with a bit more money the school could be doing this, and it gives a patronizing view of what Africa is and is about.
Yeah.
And those that never go there think that the terrible tales of sadness are what define the entire continent.
Which is not
And we
true.
know that's not,
Yeah,
it's not true.
It's not true,
You know, you've got as much wealth in some parts of cities of Africa as you have in London.
I know.
But they don't see that bit.
Yeah. They see
So,
the other worst part of it, yeah.
Now, I know that those films are done for a good reason. They want to inspire sympathy and empathy, and people would give a lot of money. So I'm not criticizing that part of it. But we have an MP here, David Lammy, who raised the whole situation, didn't they? Oh no, not another white savior going over there and explaining how things could be better if only they had more money. Now we know that, we know that. So my answer to it is, let's have Africans talking about Africa, not Lenny Henry or famous actresses or writers going over there who are, they perhaps don't have a lot of idea of what Uganda is. And the researchers tell them. So they become instant experts and they emote to camera in order to bring more money in.
But
it's not the way of doing it, I don't think.
Richard, I'm not going to say that I support that, and I'm not going to say I don't support that, because
they're doing it for good reasons.
The money that have been raised by Red Nose, for example. If we had to sit there and start, it probably goes up to something like 50 million and above. It's a lot of money. Over 100 million have been raised over the years, and it has gone to very, very good causes. My biggest problem as an African is that we, as Africans, don't get involved. We try not to get involved.
So you're saying it's not that...
And that is where the biggest problem is. I mean, because I see it from a personal point of view. When I'm going to run in the marathon. At one point, I went around Africans. I said, look, I'm going to run in the London Marathon, and I'm running for a charity in Uganda, and I need to raise this amount. Well, okay, I didn't get the money, but I needed the support. I said, okay. At one time, I said, write something, just something to say that, listen, I support Steve for ABCD. You know, I didn't even get that. Now, what I'm trying to say is that I'll try so much to ask my own people, let's get involved as well, because they're running for rhinos, they're running for African elephants, they're running for African gorillas. These are animals that are based in Africa. However poor we are, we could also do something if we don't raise the money. At least when you go there, despite the poverty, do something over there. So you went to my village. In Bosonjo. You did a project there. I was part of that project, and I thank you so much for going to that village and the water system and the small hospital place.
Yes.
Now, the whole idea is that if it wasn't me, you wouldn't have gone to the village.
No.
You see my point?
True.
So that's
True.
what I'm saying. At least I did something for my village, regardless of whether I have the money or not.
Yes.
That's why I'm trying to say that I'm going to encourage the Africans to do something for their own people as well.
Yeah.
That's why when David Lammy says that, what I would have preferred David Lammy to say, that's David Lammy, the MP, he said, look, I call upon Africans, all the Africans, and I call upon the West Indians, or our own people. We take over this initiative because it's coming to us. The money is coming to our people. Now, let's take over this project and raise this money ourselves, so that instead of seeing Richard Dove holding a black celebrity or holding a little girl somewhere, or seeing an actress holding a Ugandan street kid, let's see Stephen Molindra holding that little kid.
Yes, I agree.
Let's see David Lammy, the MP. Let's see, when we see our own people taking the initiative, then we will also be part of the structure itself, and we will raise more money from our own way, and those projects will develop. But they are not seeing us. Maybe that's why they go in.
Yeah.
I think you get.
I do.
Point, yeah.
I mean, Richard Curtis, who founded the Red Nose Initiative and Comic Relief, said we've invited David Lammy to go to Africa.
He didn't.
To make some films, and he's always refused to do so.
Yeah.
So it underlines your issue that we've got to be seen. Africans have got to be seen to be taking initiatives. And maybe that is an answer symbolically to how things could be better in terms of persuading you. I know that the priority is, can I feed my family? I know that.
Exactly.
But if I have a little bit left over, can I help the community, the hospital initiative, to improve themselves? And when I was editing the People in Power program for Al Jazeera, and I was tired of interviewing African politicians and seeing Africa from that level. And I came up with the idea, and of course I knew you, so I knew I could do this. I wanted to see Africa from the village level. So I took the whole team to your village and sat with your auntie at a bar and talked to her about her life. And I insisted, despite the protests from the team, that they would stay in the hotel in the village,
and then come,
not go to Kampala and have 4-star treatment and then come back again. We stayed in the village, and we became part of the village, and we found all those stories.
By the way, the old man, there's a lame man that was interviewed, and he would wake up every morning and go and dig his garden and so on.
He farmed pineapples, didn't he?
Pineapples and matoke, the local diet.
And his son wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor?
He's in university at the moment. And the old man was asking me, said, look, when are those people coming back? And I said,
I always wanted to come back.
If you give them the money, they'll come.
No. I think we should come back. Of course, I've left Al Jazeera now, but that's no reason why we shouldn't go back and make some films about the village. Is it 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's over 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Well, there you are. That's a good opportunity. Do they have the better water supply? Do they have the road that they were expecting? Have the politicians delivered on a better power supply? Or more particularly, instead of a tiny health clinic, do they have a hospital?
I could say that the member of parliament for our place was more worried about me and my sister than more worried about what is going to happen afterwards. Is he going to lose his position? Is somebody going to challenge him? I mean, it's a common kind of thing which is really bad, because rather than encourage the whole thing, you think in terms of me. It goes back to this what I said. It's always me, and that thing really irritates me. What about us? Think in terms of us, where people are fighting in parliament, fighting for us, fighting for the better deal now and everything, and you're looking at it with all the enthusiasm and the passion. We don't have that.
So why are you not president of Uganda? I know Museveni. He's had a good go at it. He's been in power for a long time.
I know.
Fresh view, fresh face.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, fresh view. But that's not going to be me. Obviously, it probably someone else, but not me. Not me. I don't have. Well, the political side of it has never been really my kind of thing. I've always wanted. I look from the sides and try and do something. If I can do something, the little bits that I can,
yes.
why not? That's my contribution. Now, we're coming towards the end of the program, and I just want to hear your last opinion
yes.
on maybe one or two things that we should really do at the moment.
Right.
Because this is the 21st century,
yes.
and a lot has to change. Where should we put Africa?
Okay, well, let me start by saying I absolutely love visiting Africa.
Yeah, okay.
Because of the variety, not because you're all the same, but because you're all different, right? And the countries I've been to are all completely different.
Yeah.
And the music and the culture and the sort of vibrancy of life there. I remember walking around a street market in Dakar, and I bought some of the most colourful shirts
Senegal,
in Senegal that I've got. I'm not even allowed to wear by my wife because they're too bright and everything. So, but I still do wear them. And there is a fantastic vibrancy to life in African countries, but it's not matched by political leadership and good governance.
Yeah.
And it largely, okay. I mean, I know Ghana is held up as an example to the rest of Africa, and long be so. But so what what has got to happen is that there's got to be integrity in the voting system. I agree with you that technology can help that, so that when you vote, you know that that vote is not going to be corrupted by the system. It's going to reflect your views in the politicians that you get elected.
Okay.
And one would hope that a new generation of politicians will say, we've had enough of corruption. We've had enough of me. It's all about us now. And maybe Somalia, having been the basket case, and that's a terrible expression, but you know what I mean, of Africa, can shine a light to say, if we can recover from this and create a vibrant economy out of a country that was virtually destroyed, then there is hope. There is hope. And we don't need to take lessons from the West. They've got their own kind of chaos. We can forge our own way. And it's that leap of technology, isn't it? We don't need to go through each stage of telecommunications. You know, so we laid lines all across the country. We go straight to mobile. So Africa has got to leap. You've got to get, first of all, those voting systems in place. You've got to get Bill Gates to finance them, or, you know, get Apple or someone like that, or some major corporation to finance it that don't have a vested interest in power in Africa, by the way. But then maybe you can start to create something new.
Thank you very much, Richard. What I'm going to do is that the message will be taken across, and I'll make sure that lots and lots of people get to hear what you say. And I do hope the politicians who will hear this will maybe yield to what you've just said and maybe take it on board. Although I highly doubt they have that thing in mind.
Well, they've just got to say, we can be criticized. I might be president, but I'm going to allow other voices to say different things. And I'm not going to wipe them out because I don't agree with them. You've got to recognize that democracy is messy and noisy, and you've got to let noise come from everywhere. Look at our parliament.
But it works. It works. It's noisy, it's everything, but it works. That is Africa Speaks of today. I just want to thank you so much for, thank Richard first and foremost for having agreed to come to the program, and I do hope that we'll be together again next time when you have something similar or talk more about the African continent. Before we go, I just want to remind everybody that this program is sponsored by Omega TV, and I just want to thank Omega TV once always as once and always twice and so on, as somebody say, 3 times a lady, 3 times or 4 times, whatever, for the sponsorship of this program. And you can give us a call if, in case you want anything that is to do with printing, by the way. The telephone is 0208 520 3359. And there are lots and lots and lots of things that you can get from us. Us, I mean Omega. Thank you once again, and may God bless you.